The Spurs have a golden opportunity as brand new reports have come out revealing that Giannis may force his way out of Milwaukee, and multiple teams are said to be in the mix. And R.C. Buford, Brian Wright, and the San Antonio Spurs have the opportunity to pair a bona fide superstar Hall of Fame caliber player with Victor Wembanyama. We got to dive into all of the recent reports surrounding Giannis Antetokounmpo and why the San Antonio Spurs have this perfect opportunity and are a perfect fit to land the Bucks star coming up on this episode of Spurs Digest. And we're going to get right into it. Just quickly though, got to remind you guys that over 80% of you watching this video are not subscribed. We're aiming for 2,500 subscribers, and we're aiming for that by the end of November, and I think you guys can help us out. But we're just going to get straight into the news. So thank you guys if you do subscribe. It's completely free. But Giannis, he could force his way out of Milwaukee as per sports writer. Quote, there is a rising sense of confidence that if things go badly in Milwaukee, that Giannis could be available for trade, would really force his way out of Milwaukee in the next year. This is not like far down the line. Like, this is coming now. I mean, we all saw what Milwaukee, well, we've seen so far this season what Milwaukee has done, and a lot of people are not happy with Doc Rivers. The coaching situation has been crazy there, but it's not just Doc. There are other reports, this one coming from the Hoop Herald, saying sources close to the situation indicate that tension could be rising in Milwaukee. Giannis and Drew Holiday were extremely close, and he is still upset he wasn't consulted for the trade. Doc Rivers also has not clicked with his stars since being hired. There is pressure everywhere. So I'm just going to dive into this first before we get into the whole Spurs side of this thing. I mean, the writing has been on the wall for a little bit. Giannis has been in trade rumors, not just now in the past few days, but in the past number of weeks. Even you go back years, there's always trade rumors about Giannis. But of course, he won a championship in Milwaukee, Finals MVP. He did amazing things there. But right now, this Damian Lillard trade, while Lillard's been good, there's been some question marks around Milwaukee, notably their bench, which has been getting exposed every single night. So there's a lot of people calling, man, do they tear it all down? Do they get rid of Giannis and stack up for the future? Well, we'll have to wait and see, but we're going to get into some more reports here. This was a CBS Sports article that I will link down below if you want to go give the original author the credit they deserve. Why Giannis Antetokounmpo's Bucks future is being called into question amid ugly start, and teams are circling. And if I pull a specific quote here, teams are circling and hopeful, one Western Conference team executive said, and another executive said, I wouldn't be surprised if it happened by the trade deadline. And an Eastern Conference executive, my guess is someone from Miami or the Nets, who knows, they had already heard the places believed to be Giannis would be preferred destinations are Miami, and I don't know why they said New York. They're really talking Brooklyn. I know that's New York City, whatever. But anyway, Miami and the Brooklyn Nets. There's also other teams with the means, in theory, to go after a player of Giannis's caliber, and they mentioned the Oklahoma City Thunder, which naturally is going to be at the top of the mind of most fans when you're talking about what teams have the assets and the talented players to trade for a Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? They have what could end up being a god offer, right? They have so many young talented players, plus a plethora of draft picks for the future. But when we talk about a team like the Thunder, we mentioned the Thunder, we mentioned Giannis might want to go to Brooklyn or Miami. Like, I think those are kind of smoke screens to some extent. Realistically, if Milwaukee's not just going to trade Giannis unless he asks out. But if he does ask out, which is what we're premising a lot of this on, right? Because that's what these reports are saying. This could happen very soon with top executives saying it can happen in the next 2 or 3 months. So if this happens, Giannis is not necessarily going to really be able to control where he goes. At the end of the day, like, Milwaukee could help him out and try and send him to a place that he really desires because he's done so much for the organization. He's done all this great stuff. But if they get an offer they can't refuse, like, that's still going to make them want to make this trade, right? Giannis still has a few years left on this contract. He signed a big extension. He's locked up till 2027. So it's like, this guy's going to be playing for a few years no matter where he goes. So, of course, OKC is in the mix. But what about the San Antonio Spurs? And I think us as Spurs fans, maybe we're biased in thinking like, yeah, we could absolutely land Giannis, but I don't necessarily think it's biased. And the first thing I want to show you guys is the plethora of Spurs draft picks that we have in the coming years, right? And we all know the Thunder have a bunch as well. And of course, they have probably a higher volume of young, talented players that could use as trade bait or that they'd be willing to use as trade bait. But the Spurs, Charlotte's pick is protected this year 1-14. We'll see if that conveys. Atlanta's pick has no protections. We have our own pick this year in 2025. Chicago's pick that's protected 1-10. And we got a few second rounders, a bunch in 2026 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 second-round picks in 2026 with no protections. And then in 2026 as well, we got the rights to swap a pick with Atlanta. And then even in the future, 2027, 2028, 2027, we have 2 first-round picks. I'm just saying, there is a bunch of picks you could add to some young players to make this trade more viable. And there actually have been a lot of people discussing what it would take for the San Antonio Spurs to move in order to land someone like a Giannis Antetokounmpo. And look, I'm just going to be straight up with you guys. I think the Milwaukee Bucks, based on what I think they'll get offered from other teams, because this is multiple years of a future Hall of Famer, multiple years of a top 5 player in the NBA, like, that's never, ever going to be cheap. And I think a lot of fans are going to look at the packages that are going to be offered for Antetokounmpo, and they're going to be like, well, I'm never giving up that much for this guy. I mean, it might only be 2 or 3 years. Yeah, but sometimes, if you want to go for a championship right now, that's what you got to do. You want to take that risk. Maybe he stays with you into his mid-late 30s. I don't know, right? There's a bunch of factors, but I think it starts with Jeremy Sochan and Devin Vassell. As crazy as that might sound, I think that's where Milwaukee is going to start, especially considering what some other teams will likely offer. Some other teams are going to be offering maybe their top young prospect, right? Their top young prospect for the chance to win now. Sometimes you got to mortgage a bit of the future to go all in right now. I mean, we saw Toronto didn't necessarily mortgage a ton of their future, but like, you know, you give up these stars, these beloved players, a guy like DeMar to get a guy like Kawhi. I know we all remember that. But let's dive into something that was posted on Athlon Sports, I think a couple weeks ago, and we might have even discussed this on the channel. I don't actually remember, but I've definitely discussed this with some fellow Spurs fans. And they had 3 mock trades done up, and I want you guys to give me your opinion on all of them, if you like any of them, and which ones you like the best if you do like them. And again, this is a few weeks old, and I will link it down below if you want to go read their reasoning for it. But basically, the reasoning was, you go heavy on draft picks for one, you go heavy on talented players in the other, and in the last one, you kind of have a mix of it. I think you're going to have to do all of it together, if I'm being honest, but we'll see. So basically in this one, the Spurs get Giannis and Pat Connaughton. I don't think Pat Connaughton's very good right now. He has not been great, but maybe Milwaukee wants to get off of him, right? And that's almost a plus for Milwaukee if they can get rid of him. I don't know. But in this one, the Spurs give up Keldon Johnson, Harrison Barnes, Zach Collins, 4 first-round picks. I'm not really sure. You can't give up 2 back-to-back year ones, so I think there's some iffy stuff going on there with 2026 and 2027, but you can give up that 2027 first from Atlanta and the 2031 with Dallas. Maybe you turn one of those Spurs ones into a pick swap. Basically, what they're saying here is 6 first-round picks, Harrison Barnes, Keldon Johnson, and Zach Collins for Giannis. I actually, like, 6 first-round picks sounds amazing, but if you're Milwaukee, you're not doing this unless you're absolutely ready to mortgage everything in the future. You still have Chris Middleton, you still have Damian Lillard, and you don't have very much young talent on the team that you can really rely on to go into the next generation. And like, yeah, this will obviously help set you up for the long term, but you're talking picks that are 5-6 years from now here in some cases. And it's like, yeah, that'll help you great in the future, but do you really want to do that? I mean, look, that's an insane haul of draft picks, I'm not going to lie, but I'm just not sure Milwaukee does this. Maybe I'm crazy, maybe, but like, imagine we had Giannis. Well, what would we ask for Wemby? You know, I think that trade ask would actually be higher than for Giannis, but like, you have an MVP, you have a finals MVP, you have a future Hall of Famer. You're going to ask for everything for him. So the second one here is, again, Giannis and Connaughton, but this time for Vassell, Sochan, Keldon Johnson, and 3 first-round picks. And I think this is where it gets into that realistic scenario here. I think this is where Milwaukee probably starts. All right, they say, okay, give us Keldon Johnson. We hope he can bounce back a little bit. Give us Devin Vassell as like one of the kind of young pieces that we can work around. Same thing with Jeremy Sochan. These 2 guys look like they have a lot of potential, especially Sochan this year, who is thriving in these lineups, though, where Wemby is struggling. Wemby being guarded by the smaller guy, Sochan being guarded by the 5s, and Sochan's proving he's a lot quicker. He's able to slash a bit better, get to his position a bit better. That's not what this video is about, though. This is the one, to me, I think, of the 3 that is the most realistic. Vassell, Sochan, Keldon Johnson, and 3 firsts. And I wouldn't be surprised if Milwaukee asked for 4 or 5 firsts in this trade as well. I think that is what it would take. And we'll go into the final trade here. It's simply just Giannis for Keldon Johnson, Zach Collins, Julian Champagnie, Jeremy Sochan, 3 first-round picks from the Spurs, and the 2031 pick from Minnesota. So you're basically taking out, in this case, Devin Vassell, and you're adding an extra first-round pick. I think Milwaukee's more likely to go for this one, but I want to hear your all thoughts down below right now, because honestly, like, I know this looks crazy, but I don't think Milwaukee would ever accept anything less for Giannis. But if you're the Spurs, do you even want to give away this kind of thing here for Giannis? I mean, Wemby is the future, and you bring Giannis in, with Wemby, and you immediately have a team that could likely contend. And the Spurs still have some depth pieces, even if you give away Vassell, Sochan, and Keldon Johnson, but they're definitely going to have to do some work in terms of free agency, in terms of maybe some other trades to fill out some roles. I'm not totally sold, but at the same time, it's like Giannis is right now way better than any of these guys probably will ever be. I mean, is there a world where like the combination of Vassell and Sochan and whatever those picks turn into something that's better than Giannis? Yeah. But realistically, when you get that chance to get an MVP player, that's what it's going to cost. And if the Spurs are feeling like this is the time to make this big splash, I think that's what they would have to offer. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are down below. I don't necessarily see the Spurs making this type of offer for Giannis, but at the same time, if other teams in the conference are like looking for him, and the Spurs have this kind of good offer with a bunch of first-round picks, some talented young players like Vassell and Sochan, I know Giannis doesn't exactly help the spacing, and one of the Spurs' biggest problems right now is three-point shooting, but you can fix that over the next year or two or three while you have Giannis Antetokounmpo on the team. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts down below. There's a lot of stuff coming out about Giannis right now, but that'll do it for now for this episode of Spurs Digest. If there are any updates, we will keep you updated. Leave your thoughts down below. Leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. You guys know how it is. We really appreciate all of your support. I've been your host, Josh Gosse, and I'll catch you in the next one.